So we see a lot of people that are having issues with their Model A running and they think it's a fuel issue.
Most of the time when someone thinks they have a fuel problem, it's an electrical problem. The first thing to look at when you are having problems with the car not starting is if you turn on the key, the amp meter should deflect. If it doesn't, step on the starter a little bit and you should see it flicker. That's the points opening and closing. Okay, that indicates that there's spark to your points. That really eliminates a lot of problems. But let's say that that isn't the case. Let's go under the hood and try something. Open the distributor. And with the key on, I check the points. There should be spark between the points. You see the little spark there? Yep. And when you do that, you should hear it snap over here. You should have a good, healthy blue spark. If you don't get spark, then you're worried that your points may be contaminated with oxidation. So we'll get a screwdriver and basically make another set of points, or so that we're getting contact. I'll hold the point slightly open, and if I'm getting good spark here, that tells me my points could be the problem, or should be the problem. If you have spark like that, you want to make sure that the rotor here will touch this little carbon button on the bottom of the distributor cap. So we'll put this all together again. When I turn the car over, I should have spark to the spark plugs. If I don't, either the rotor is too short and not coming close enough to the point gap here, but it should come within 30 thousandths of these little points on here when it goes around. It should fit tighter on there. Let's get a different one and put it on. If you leave the key on by accident, oftentimes you'll burn up the coil, and usually you can tell by if the coil is was oil filled, especially this top will be bulged really high. Sometimes even an epoxy filled one, you'll swell it. And of course the first thing to go is the secondary windings, because they're fine. You'll notice that when you try to snap the points, sometimes you can even hear the snap in the burn portion inside the coil. And if you hear snapping up there and you didn't leave the key on, sometimes it's just a bad wire. This little black wire that comes out, or this red one, is bad. And it can also burn up that wire that goes between the two plates on the distributors. And if it gets hot enough without discharging, it's gonna
Burn up.
Yeah, and that coil can get very hot.
So some of us that leave our keys in the ignition all the time, just dummy check yourself and make sure when you're diagnosing these ignition problems, you turn the key off.
Yeah,
I pull mine out and hang it on the windshield wiper.
but I usually put the little safety fuse that fits on the starter, and I usually, if you want a safety, you can do that, or they sell safety switches to cut the battery completely.
So just to recap, the first test is to see if we got spark at the points. We did, but if we didn't, we used the screwdriver to short out the points. If that works, then we know we got some problem with our points, some corrosion on there, some gummed up buildup, right?
And if that doesn't work, take your little voltmeter and make sure that you got voltage to the coil. That's approximately 6 volts. With the points open.
Using the positive on a head bolt for a ground.
Yes.
All right,
And
we
I
got
am.
6.2 volts.
Okay. The other possibility is that's the wire coming from the ignition switch. If this connection is turned in too far, it's just got pipe threads on there. If it turns in too far, it can short out to the side of the distributor and you won't have any electricity to the points. If you back it out a little bit, sometimes it helps.
And that's the wire coming from the ignition switch.
That's the wire coming from the ignition switch. The other thing is this wire goes up and attaches to the bottom of here. Let's get another set of points. Dirty, crusty, rotten old top point. But you'll see it attaches right down here. So it can easily, this wire here attaches right there. And you can see how that would easily short to this plate or short to the outside.
Oh, the actual wire terminal here.
Right.
Okay.
So sometimes it's easy to just
Okay.
take your continuity meter and you check continuity between there and the ground with the points open. So I always check when I build a distributor like this one. With the points open, I should have no continuity.
And turn the bottom of the distributor, and points are closed.
Points are closed, we have continuity. Points are open, we have nothing. Points are closed. This is just a switch. The coil's charging up when the points are closed. As soon as the points break, coil discharges and dumps all that current through the condenser to the spark plugs. If, for instance, this little wire over here, look how frayed and crappy this wire is, bare here. If that's shorting out against the side, it'll short out and you won't have any power to the points. The newer wires that you buy from your supply house are longer and they'll go all the way around at least once, so there isn't quite so much stress, because as the spark advances, this hooks to the lever up on the steering column, and that's how you advance the points. But every time you do that, you wreak havoc on this little wire in the bottom of the distributor. And this is the hot wire. So when that closes, it allows that coil to charge up. When it pops open, that coil will discharge.
If we open that and put the screwdriver in there, we should get spark. If we don't, then we're thinking we probably have a short in the distributor somewhere.
We have either a short in the distributor, but if you disconnect this plug, or whatever, make sure that you have voltage at the coil.
Okay. So before we think we got a short in here, we want to make sure we got voltage at the coil.
Because this is a pain to take it apart, and as soon as you pull this screw out and lift this off so you can take this plate out of there,
then we've lost our timing.
and you can pull the distributor because the distributor is set uneven here, so you can pull it out and you don't have to time it to put it back in. Once this is timed for this car the way it's set up, if you don't loosen this screw, this is how you adjust the timing. You loosen this screw and turn this rubbing block. If you don't do that, this thing will always be set for this car. But if you take this out, and you'll see this slides off. This is the rubbing block that goes around. There's grease on there because you don't want it to have some grease so it doesn't wear that little block on the points off. That's what lifts the points, is that little block on there. Now the car will be out of time because we don't know exactly where this was. And you'll have to time it again. But if you take this out, you'll see here's the wire, and this is not a modern wire. You've got it sitting toward the inside of there, and it's got a little fiber washer here to keep it from shorting out to the side. You see how close this wire comes to the outside of the, to the body of the distributor, which could short it out. So you have to be really careful of all those things. Here's the other potential problem, is a condenser. The condenser is sort of a buffering storage. I mean, it's a capacitor is what it is. This makes sure you get a quick discharge, a sharp discharge from the coil to the spark plug. If this is burned out, the storage doesn't provide that shock absorber in here, the car won't start. Usually the indication is the car will start missing once in a while. Pretty soon the car won't run at all. The problem that's hard on the condenser is it's sitting right over the exhaust manifold here, and so it gets a lot of heat and it can dry it out real easily. They do sell a shield that goes between these two head bolts and kind of sits over here and directs the heat away from the condenser. I've never really used them. Buying used ones or new old stock at swap meets is not always a good idea. If you buy brand new ones that are short proof, they will last for a lifetime.